So the first issue we want to look at is the question of corporate parenting, and we saw the example of Thomas Cook, where we had a large company, we had a parent, and they were probably managing a series of different business units. Were they doing a good job? And we saw that, well, they were paying themselves a lot of money, it looked like, to maybe not do a great job, and so they weren't being a very good parent with their children. So what is a good parent? What's a bad parent? And what are some different roles parents can play in large diversified organizations? So first off, again, let's remind ourselves of the parent-child relationship. The parent organization is here, and we have a series of different business activities or strategic business units, and each of them have their own activity. And the question we're asking now is, to what extent this parent is adding value to these different activities? To what extent this parent can actually make sense of all of this and make it such that 1 + 1 is greater than 2? Are we adding value at all or not? And if you're not adding value, if you're a parent and you've got these business activities down here and you know what, you're not doing your job, well, you're going to expose yourself to other companies that are outside the market that are going to say, ooh, I'd like to come in and take over maybe business activity too from this bad parent. And they can do a forced buyout. They can come in and take away your company. They can, especially if it's a publicly traded company, you're going to be attracting better parents to come and do your job for you. So, what's a good parent? What does it mean to be a good parent? First would be a question of your ability to create a vision and inspire all these different parts of the organization to work as a team to provide a sense of what it means to be together. And that's a very important part of being a parent. We have large organizations today where the parent, sometimes the CEO, plays a very important part in what's going on. Elon Musk, for example, plays a key role in this envisioning process. The parent can create and facilitate synergies. Sometimes we know that cooperation can exist between different business units, and this exists because it's facilitated. It's not automatic. Cooperation is very difficult in business units, and so good parents create reward systems and structures to facilitate cooperation and develop these synergies. It has to be managed. Third, value-adding role of the parent is to provide learning and coaching opportunities for business units. Business units can learn from each other, and a good parent will help its different business units learn from experience of other business units. Sharing, learning across the organization is an obvious way to do that. A good parent also provides value-adding central services. For example, financial capital for investment by the children. Shared common services that we can put into common across the business units, thus decreasing cost of each business unit. Provide an opportunity for internal transfers of human resources. We can move people around from one organization to the other centrally because we know of what's needed across the organization, and we can improve employee motivation in this manner. And lastly, an intervening role by a value-adding parent. We can go in, we can look, we can challenge the way things are doing. A good company is doing certain things. We can monitor. We can reward behaviors in each of these various business units. We're not standing apart from the business unit. We can actually intervene, get involved, and try to improve performance of each of the business units. So this would be the role of a good parent. Well, what about a bad parent? What about value-destroying activities by parents? Now, these do exist. I mean, and Thomas Cook is probably a good example. First thing that a bad parent's going to do is basically add costs. You're adding a layer on top of an existing structure. You're taking a business unit and putting a big holding or corporation on top of it, you're adding a layer of management, and in some cases you're adding significant costs in terms of CEO, CFO benefits and pay benefits and whatnot. That's not cool. I mean, and you're basically creating a huge monster that sucks up a lot of money, and that's value destruction. Secondly, sometimes parent organizations like putting on red tape, putting on rules, putting on a whole bunch of things that are required to get things that can be done really easily locally on the ground. Companies often complain about this, that they'll say, hey, look, I've got my customer, they're right in front of me, I can solve their problem right away locally, but I've got to go through certain channels and get everything approved through the head office before I can react. This decreases value. The customer will become upset, the employee will become upset because they're trying to serve the customer. Basically, it's a lose-lose, and too much red tape can basically detract from the real role of a company, and that is adding value. Another value-destroying action would be that of hiding weak performers. Sometimes you can have a company made up of many business units. One business unit is maybe underperforming, and because we're a big organization, because we have multiple business units, if the head of this large organization says, well, we're going to hide the weak performers, we're going to basically, we have a lot of numbers out there, and one business unit can make a lot of money, the other one's losing, we're not going to be really picky on this one business unit maybe that's not making a lot of money because the other one's covering with superior benefits and superior profits. Result is that weak business units can persist. Now, sometimes those business units need to exist. Sometimes, and we'll see this later, is that weak performers may be linked to high performers, that there's some sort of a synergy going on between them. You just can't dump off all of the business units that don't perform to their expectations that you fix, because they're creating benefits maybe for your high performers. But opaque performance criteria result in potentially weak performers persisting over time. And the last thing that I'd mention would be too much intervention. A value-destroying parent is constantly looking in, not letting the company run its business. They're basically, getting too much involved, and this can result in some bad behaviors on behalf of the companies themselves. And primarily, they'll be looking at their unit performance. They'll be looking to please the parent. And so if I've got multiple business units and I'm constantly looking in on them, they're going to want to look like they're performing well, and so they're going to be constantly looking at their own performance. And when I ask them, well, why aren't you cooperating with the other business units? Well, it's because I'm looking in on them all the time, and I'm looking at their performance, and they see it, and so they start focusing a lot on their own business unit performance and not on cooperation. There are 3 corporate parenting scenarios that exist, and they're pretty basic. The first scenario is the scenario of the portfolio manager, and these are experts, industrial experts that really master certain industries and can identify great business opportunities. They do it. They're experts, and they can identify opportunities and for investment much better even than the marketplace can. So portfolio manager is a role, a scenario where the parent basically is investing and divesting in business units because they can make a significant return on their investment. What do these people do? Well, again, they're looking for financial targets. They're imposing financial targets on these different activities. They're not involved a lot with the day-to-day operations. They're investing. They're bringing a company into the organization. They're fixing financial targets for it. And they're hopefully making profit by doing so. And a company that doesn't meet its financial performance is, let go. It's divested. These portfolio managers are not really very interested in the relatedness of the different businesses. They're just looking at the bottom line. Second type of scenario would be a synergy manager. And these are parents that understand that there is potential value from cooperation, that we can bring all these different activities together. And if they work together, we can potentially get some synergies and do something good together. And so their focus is on managing these synergies. They're providing a common vision, a common purpose, things we spoke of before, and they're hopefully getting people to work together and cooperate or collaborate. Be careful. One, there's a lot of cost to this. Managing synergies is tough to do. It involves a lot of management activities. It involves a lot of change of reward structures. It's not as easy as one thinks. The second would be that business units have a hard time getting out of the self-interest mindset. If they think that their survival depends on their own performance and not on the performance of the entire group of business units, they will continue to focus on their own performance. So synergy managers really need to look at how reward structures are defined, how managers are rewarded. If they're rewarded for their business unit profit or margin, well, managers are just like everybody else. They're going to focus on what you tell them to focus on. And if it's on my own business unit performance, then I will look at my own business unit performance. And I won't cooperate much with other business units. And also, as I mentioned before, be very, very careful of illusory synergies. Synergies are often claimed, but really, really difficult to create in reality. The last role we see is the parental developer. And this is basically the role of the parent coming in and saying, what can I bring to the different business units that are out there? How can I help them grow? How can I nourish them and make them become great companies? I'm bringing my capabilities, my resources as a parent to these different business units. So I'm transferring down to the business units my value, my resources that I'm bringing. I'm providing central services. I'm providing capital. I'm bringing each of them some potential value. So we can see it's less interested in cooperation and more interested in this idea of the parent giving something to each child. Number one, focus on what is your value added. What's your value added? Are you making sure you have a value added? And what are you bringing to all these companies should be your focus. And secondly, if you're not bringing value added to a particular business unit, if the business unit is really performing really well and you know what, the parent doesn't bring it much and it's doing really well, well, that's not really in your strategy. And if that's the case and you're not adding value to this jewel that's out there, then you should probably divest it and sell it off. I mean, that's not part of your strategy as a parental developer.